The dust cloud rose behind the stagecoach like a funeral shroud, and Olivia Zimmerman knew with absolute certainty that she was going to die out here in this God-forsaken territory if she did not keep moving forward. The afternoon sun of August 1878 beat down mercilessly on the New Mexico desert as she stumbled along the rutted trail, her canteen empty for the past 3 hours, her lips cracked and bleeding, her vision swimming with exhaustion. She had been traveling for 2 days straight after bandits attacked the stage just outside of Deeming, killing the driver and the guard, taking everything of value including all the water supplies except for the single canteen she had clutched desperately in her arms as she fled into the scrubland. Behind her lay a broken dream and a dead fiancé, though those wounds had nothing to do with the bandit attack. Thomas had died 6 months earlier in Kansas City from pneumonia, leaving her with nothing but debts and a one-way ticket west that he had purchased before his death. She had no family to return to, no prospects, only a letter from a schoolhouse in Steins Pass, New Mexico, offering her a teaching position if she could arrive before September. That letter had been her lifeline, her reason to keep breathing when grief threatened to drown her completely. Now it seemed that fate had other plans, plans that involved her bones bleaching white under this relentless sun. Her foot caught on a rock, and she went down hard, tasting blood and dirt. The impact knocked what little air remained in her lungs out in a desperate wheeze. She tried to push herself up, but her arms trembled and gave out. The world tilted sideways, colors bleeding together into a wash of brown and blue and blinding white light. She could not remember anymore why moving forward mattered, could not recall where she had been going or why. The heat wrapped around her like a suffocating blanket, and darkness crept in from the edges of her vision. Somewhere far away, she heard the sound of hoofbeats. Maybe the bandits had returned to finish what they started. Maybe it was death itself riding toward her on a pale horse. She found she did not particularly care which. The ground beneath her cheek felt almost cool now, or perhaps she was simply too far gone to feel the burn anymore. Her eyes drifted closed. The hoofbeats grew louder, then stopped. She heard a man's voice, rough and urgent, saying words she could not quite make out through the ringing in her ears. Strong hands touched her face, tilted her head gently. Water trickled across her lips and she choked, coughed, tried instinctively to drink even though her throat had forgotten how to swallow properly. "Easy now, easy," the voice said, clearer this time. "Not too fast or you will just bring it back up. That is it, just a little at a time." She managed to swallow a few precious mouthfuls before the darkness returned and pulled her under completely. When consciousness returned in fragments, she became aware of movement, of being carried, of strong arms cradling her against a broad chest that smelled of leather and sweat and horse. Her body jostled with each step and she moaned softly, pain radiating through every fiber of her being. "I know," the voice said above her, steady and calm despite the obvious exertion in his breathing. "I know it hurts, but we have got to keep moving. Town is still 8 miles out and the sun will be setting in a few hours. Just hold on." She tried to open her eyes, but they felt sealed shut, her lashes crusted with dried tears and dust. Her lips moved soundlessly, trying to form words that would not come. "Do not try to talk," he continued, his boots crunching steadily on the trail. "Save your strength. I am going to get you to safety, I promise you that. My name is Wade Barrett, and I will not let you die out here." The certainty in his voice penetrated the fog in her mind. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that someone had finally arrived to pull her back from the precipice. But trust was a luxury she had not been able to afford for a very long time. Still, she had no choice but to surrender to his care. her body too broken and depleted to do anything but remain limp in his arms. Time became meaningless. Sometimes she surfaced enough to hear his voice, talking steadily as if to keep both of them grounded in reality. He told her about the cattle drive he had just finished, about how he was heading back to his ranch outside of Stein's Pass when he spotted the buzzards circling overhead. He told her that she was lucky he decided to investigate instead of riding on by, told her that she must have a powerful will to live to have made it as far as she did in this heat with no water. Most people would have given up miles back, he said, his breathing more labored now. She could feel the tremor in his arms, the strain in his muscles from carrying her weight for so long. You are a fighter, I can tell. You just hold on to that fight a little longer. She drifted away again, swimming through fever dreams where Thomas called to her from the other side of a river she could not cross, where her mother, who had died when she was 12, stood at the water's edge telling her it was not yet her time to cross over. When she woke once more, the quality of light had changed. The brutal white glare had softened to amber and gold, late afternoon bleeding into early evening. Wade had stopped walking. She felt him lower himself carefully to the ground, settling her across his lap, his back against what felt like a large rock. His breathing came in harsh gasps, and she realized with a distant sort of clarity that he had pushed himself to the point of exhaustion carrying her. Just need to rest a minute, he said, though she did not know if he was speaking to her or to himself. Just a minute, then we will keep going. She managed to crack her eyes open slightly. Through the narrow slits, she could make out the blurred shape of a face, a strong jaw dark with stubble, a nose that looked like it had been broken at least once, eyes that might have been blue or gray in the fading light. His hat had been pushed back and his dark hair was plastered to his forehead with sweat. He looked down at her and something shifted in his expression, a softening around his eyes and mouth. There you are, he said quietly. Was starting to worry you would not wake up again. Can you drink a little more? She tried to nod and the motion sent pain lancing through her skull. He reached for his canteen and brought it to her lips with careful tenderness, letting her take small sips until she turned her head away. Where? She managed to croak out, the single word scraping her raw throat like broken glass. About 5 miles outside of Stein's Pass still, he answered, returning the stopper to the canteen. I know it does not seem like we have made much progress, but we have covered a good distance. I just need to catch my breath and then we will finish this last stretch. There is a doctor in town, name of Holloway. He will get you fixed up proper. 5 more miles. It might as well have been 500. She could see the exhaustion carved into every line of his face, see the way his hands trembled slightly as he set down the canteen. He had already carried her so far, pushed his body beyond reasonable limits to save a complete stranger. Guilt washed through her, hot and bitter. Too much, she whispered. Leave me, get help. His expression hardened instantly, his jaw setting in a stubborn line. That is not happening. I did not haul you this far just to leave you for the coyotes while I ride off. We are finishing this together or not at all. You cannot. Watch me. Despite everything, despite the pain and the exhaustion and the near certainty that they would both die out here, she felt the corner of her mouth twitch in something that might have been a smile. Stubborn fool. Noble, brave, stubborn fool. Besides, he added, his voice gentling, I already told you my name and made you a promise. Wade Barrett does not break his promises, especially not to ladies in distress. It is a matter of personal pride at this point. Olivia, she managed. Zimmerman. Well then, Miss Zimmerman, it is a pleasure to make your acquaintance despite the unfortunate circumstances. He shifted carefully, preparing to stand again. Now, if you will excuse me, I have a few more miles of heroic rescuing to accomplish before sundown. He stood slowly, lifting her with him, and she felt the tremor run through his entire body from the effort. But his grip remained secure, his arms steady despite the obvious fatigue. He took a deep breath, then another, then started walking again. The sun sank lower, painting the desert in shades of orange and crimson and deep purple. The temperature began to drop, and Olivia found herself shivering despite the residual heat still radiating from the sand. Wade held her closer, sharing his body warmth without comment. His steps had slowed considerably, each one requiring visible effort, but he never faltered, never stopped moving forward. "Tell me something," he said after a long silence, his voice slightly breathless. "Tell me what brought you out to this corner of hell." Helps to talk, keeps the mind focused on something besides the pain. She wanted to refuse, wanted to keep her story locked away where it could not hurt anymore. But he had earned the right to know, had quite literally carried the burden of her survival on his shoulders. The least she could do was give him some words to distract from his exhaustion. "Teaching position," she said slowly, forcing each word out. "Stein's Pass. Letter said to arrive before September." "A school teacher," he repeated, and she heard the surprise in his voice. "We have been needing one desperately. The last teacher left 6 months ago, ran off with a gambler passing through. The children have been running wild ever since. Might not make it now, lost everything in the attack." "What attack?" She told him haltingly about the stage, about the bandits who appeared out of nowhere with guns blazing, about the blood and the screaming and the desperate flight into the wilderness. His arms tightened around her protectively as she spoke, and she felt a low rumble in his chest that might have been a curse. "Rodriguez's gang," he said grimly. "They have been terrorizing the territory for months now. The marshal has been trying to track them down, but they keep disappearing into the mountains. I am sorry you had to experience that. I am sorry the driver and guard could not protect you better. They died trying. That is something at least." He was quiet for a moment, then added, "The teaching position will still be there. The town council will understand about the circumstances, and as for your belongings, well, Stein's Pass might not look like much, but the people take care of their own. Once word gets out about what happened to you, you will have more donations than you know what to do with." The kindness in his words made something crack open inside her chest, some protective wall she had built up over the months since Thomas's death. Tears leaked from the corners of her eyes, and she could not stop them. "Hey now," Wade said softly, "none of that. You are going to be all right, Miss Zimmerman, I swear it." "Everyone I trust dies or leaves," she heard herself say, the words tumbling out unbidden. "My mother, my father, Thomas." Everyone. Who is Thomas? Who was Thomas? The correction felt like swallowing ground glass. "My fiancé. He died last winter, pneumonia. I could not even afford a proper funeral." Wade's steps slowed for just a moment, then continued with renewed determination. "I am sorry for your loss. Truly. But I can promise you this much: I am not dying today, and neither are you. Sometimes you just have to trust that the universe is not done with you yet." She wanted to argue, wanted to point out all the ways the universe had already proven it had no particular interest in her well-being. But she was so tired, and his heartbeat was so steady beneath her ear, and the darkness was creeping back in around the edges. She let herself drift, trusting despite herself that he would keep his word. The next time she woke, there were lights in the distance. Not the cold, distant stars overhead, but warm, flickering lights that spoke of civilization, of safety, of salvation. Wade had picked up his pace slightly, though she could feel how each step cost him now, how his breathing had become ragged and harsh. "Almost there," he panted. "See those lights? That is Stein's Pass. Just a little further, Miss Zimmerman. Stay with me just a little further." She tried to help, tried to make herself lighter somehow through sheer force of will, but her body refused to cooperate. All she could do was remain as still as possible and pray that his legs did not give out before they reached those precious lights. The details of the town began to resolve out of the gathering darkness. A main street lined with wooden buildings, a saloon with music drifting through its doors, a general store with its windows dark, a church with a white steeple barely visible against the night sky. Wade stumbled slightly and caught himself, his grip on her tightening reflexively. "Wade Barrett, is that you?" a voice called out from somewhere nearby. "What in the name of all that is holy are you carrying?" "Get the doctor," Wade rasped out. "Stage attack victim. Dehydration and exhaustion. She needs help now." Suddenly there were people everywhere, voices overlapping in concern and surprise. Someone tried to take Olivia from Wade's arms and he snarled at them, actually snarled like a protective animal, pulling her closer. "Wade, you have got to let Doc Holloway examine her," another voice said, this one older and calmer. "You have done your part, son. Let us take over now." "I promised," Wade said, and Olivia heard the edge of delirium in his voice. "Promised I would get her to safety. 10 miles I carried her, promised I would not let her die." "And you kept that promise," the older voice assured him. "But if you do not let go now, she might still die because you are too stubborn to accept help. Is that what you want?" That got through to him. His arms loosened fractionally, and then other hands were lifting her, gentler hands that carried her through a doorway into a room lit by oil lamps. She was placed on something soft, a bed or examination table, and someone was peeling away her torn and filthy dress, making shocked sounds at the state of her body beneath. "Miss, can you hear me?" An older man's face swam into view above her, lined and weathered but with kind eyes. "I am Dr. Holloway. You are safe now. I need to examine you and get some fluids into you. This is going to be uncomfortable but necessary. You understand?" She managed a slight nod. The doctor turned away, calling out instructions to what sounded like several assistants. Cool water touched her skin, washing away layers of dust and dried blood. She hissed in pain as the cloth passed over raw, blistered patches on her arms and face. "Where is Wade?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Being taken care of," the doctor assured her. "Fool nearly killed himself bringing you in. I have never seen anything quite like it in all my years. He was completely spent when he arrived, could barely stand. But he refused to put you down until he was sure you would receive proper care." Something warm bloomed in Olivia's chest at those words, something she was too exhausted and overwhelmed to examine closely. "Is he all right?" "He will be once he gets some rest and food in him. That man has the constitution of an ox, thank the Lord. Now stop worrying about him and let me worry about you." The examination seemed to last forever. The doctor checked her pulse, her breathing, her temperature. He made her drink what felt like gallons of water mixed with salt and other things that tasted terrible, but that her body absorbed desperately. He treated her blistered skin with some kind of salve that stung at first then brought blessed relief. He wrapped her feet, which were a mass of cuts and bruises from walking in shoes never meant for desert travel. "You are severely dehydrated and suffering from heat exhaustion," he pronounced finally. "But thanks to that stubborn cowboy, you got here before it progressed to heat stroke. Another few hours out there, and we would be having a very different conversation right now. As it is, you need complete bed rest for at least 3 days, plenty of fluids and light meals until your system stabilizes. I will want to check on you daily." "I cannot afford. We will discuss payment later, once you are recovered," the doctor interrupted firmly. "For now, rest is the only thing you need to worry about. Sarah here will sit with you tonight and make sure you drink regularly." A plump woman with gray hair and a no-nonsense expression appeared at his elbow. "Do not you worry, dear. I will take good care of you. Now close those eyes and let yourself heal." Olivia wanted to protest, wanted to insist on knowing what had happened to Wade, wanted to understand why a complete stranger would nearly kill himself to save her. But her body had other ideas. The moment she let herself relax into the soft mattress, unconsciousness rose up and claimed her with gentle finality. She dreamed of strong arms and steady heartbeats, of a voice promising safety in the darkness, of blue-gray eyes looking down at her with something that might have been wonder, or might have been her imagination painting wishes onto reality. When she woke, late morning sunlight was streaming through a window and Sarah sat in a chair beside the bed, knitting something in cheerful yellow yarn. "There you are," Sarah said, setting aside her work with a warm smile. "How are you feeling, dear?" Olivia took careful inventory of her body. Everything hurt, a deep pervasive ache that went down to her bones. Her skin felt tight and tender, her throat was still raw, and her head pounded with each heartbeat. But she was alive, undeniably and solidly alive. "Like I was trampled by a herd of cattle," she admitted hoarsely. Sarah laughed and reached for a pitcher on the bedside table. "That is a good sign. If you can complain, you are on the mend. Drink this. Doctor's orders." The water was cool and fresh and tasted better than anything Olivia could remember. She drank greedily until Sarah pulled the glass away. "Slowly," she chided gently. "A little at a time, or it will all come back up. There will be plenty more once this settles." "Where am I exactly?" "Dr. Holloway's spare room. He uses it for patients who need watching. You have been asleep for almost 14 hours straight." 14 hours. Olivia tried to sit up and her body screamed in protest. Sarah immediately moved to help, propping pillows behind her back until she was in a semi-reclined position. "The cowboy," Olivia said. "Wade, is he all right?" Sarah's expression softened into something knowing and amused. "That man has already been by twice this morning to check on you. Doc finally had to threaten to bar him from the premises if he did not go home and get proper rest himself. But yes, he is fine. Exhausted and sore, but fine. He truly is a hero, you know. The whole town is talking about it." Heat that had nothing to do with fever crept into Olivia's cheeks. "He saved my life." "That he did. Carried you 10 miles according to what he told the doc. Most men could not manage half that distance with a full-grown woman, but Wade Barrett is not most men." There was definitely something knowing in Sarah's tone now, a matchmaker's gleam in her eye. Olivia felt suddenly self-conscious, aware that she must look absolutely terrible with her sun-damaged skin and tangled hair and borrowed nightgown. "I need to thank him properly," she said. "When he comes back. If he comes back." "Oh, he will be back," Sarah assured her with absolute certainty. "Wild horses could not keep that man away. I have known Wade since he was a boy, and I have never seen him look at anyone the way he looked at you last night. Like you were something precious and breakable that he could not bear to set down." Olivia's heart did something complicated in her chest. She barely knew Wade Barrett, had only fragmentary memories of their time together on that desperate journey. It was gratitude making her feel this way, simple gratitude mixed with the vulnerability of having been saved from certain death. Nothing more than that, except the warmth spreading through her at the thought of seeing him again suggested otherwise. The door opened and Dr. Holloway entered, looking much fresher than he had the night before. He smiled when he saw Olivia awake. "Good morning, Miss Zimmerman. You certainly look better than you did 12 hours ago. Let me take a look at you." He conducted another examination, listening to her heart and lungs, checking her reflexes and the state of her skin. He seemed satisfied with what he found, nodding to himself as he made notes in a small leather journal. "You are healing nicely," he pronounced. "Another 2 days of rest and light activity, and then we can discuss getting you moved to more permanent lodgings. I understand you are meant to be our new school teacher, if the position is still available after all this." "Available?" "My dear girl, the town council is falling over themselves with gratitude that you survived to take it. They have already arranged for housing and have been collecting supplies to replace what you lost. You will meet with them once you are fully recovered, but rest assured your job is secure." Relief flooded through her so powerfully that tears pricked at her eyes again. She had been so certain that her one chance at a new life had died in the desert, that she would have nothing left once she recovered except more emptiness and uncertainty. To learn that the opportunity still existed felt like a reprieve from a death sentence. "Thank you," she managed. "Thank you so much." "Thank Wade Barrett," the doctor replied. "He is the one who refused to let you die. Now I am going to have Sarah bring you some broth and bread. Start with small amounts and see how your stomach handles it. I will check on you again this evening." The day passed in a haze of sleeping and drinking and eating tiny amounts of bland food. Sarah kept up a steady stream of cheerful conversation when Olivia was awake, sharing gossip about the town and its residents, painting a picture of a small community bound together by the harsh realities of desert life. She talked about the general store owner who extended credit to struggling families, about the saloon keeper who ran a fair game and did not water down his whiskey, about the minister who preached about love and forgiveness instead of fire and brimstone. And she talked about Wade Barrett, the rancher who had built his spread from nothing through sheer determination and backbreaking work. He was 28 years old, had come out west when he was barely 20 with nothing but a horse and a dream. He had worked as a ranch hand for several years, saving every penny, learning everything he could about cattle and horses and how to survive in this unforgiving land. 3 years ago, he had managed to purchase a small plot of land and a dozen head of cattle. Now, his ranch was one of the most successful in the territory, his reputation for integrity and hard work known throughout New Mexico. "Never married, though," Sarah added casually, too casually. "Has had plenty of opportunities, mind you. Plenty of young ladies have set their caps for him over the years, but he always said he was too busy building his future to think about settling down. Too busy until yesterday, apparently." "Sarah," Olivia protested weakly, "do not read too much into this. He is a good man who did a good deed." "That is all. If you say so, dear." Sarah's tone suggested she did not believe that for a moment. "If you say so." Late afternoon had faded into early evening when the door opened again and Wade Barrett stepped inside. Olivia's breath caught despite herself. In the lamplight, cleaned up and rested, he was striking in a way she had not fully registered during their desperate journey. Tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair that curled slightly at the collar, those blue-gray eyes she remembered, and a face that was all hard planes and angles softened by the obvious concern in his expression. He held his hat in his hands and stood just inside the doorway as if uncertain of his welcome. "Miss Zimmerman," he said, his voice rougher than she remembered. "I hope I am not disturbing you. I just wanted to see for myself that you were all right." "I will just go check on something in the other room," Sarah announced brightly, practically running for the door. She closed it behind her with a decisive click that left Olivia and Wade alone together. "Please," Olivia said, gesturing to the chair Sarah had vacated. "Come in. I have been hoping to see you, to thank you properly." He moved forward slowly, settling himself in the chair with visible relief. Now that she could study him properly, She saw the lines of exhaustion still etched around his eyes and mouth, saw the stiffness in his movements that spoke of overworked muscles. "You should be resting," she said, "not visiting invalids." "Could not rest until I knew you were truly all right," he admitted. "Kept seeing you in my mind the way you looked out there on the trail, so still and pale. Thought I had found you too late." The raw emotion in his words struck something deep inside her. She found herself reaching out without thinking, her hand extended toward him. He looked at it for a moment, then carefully took it in his own much larger one, his calloused fingers gentle against her damaged skin. "You saved my life," she said simply. "I do not have adequate words to express my gratitude. 10 miles you carried me. The doctor said you nearly killed yourself doing it." "Would have carried you 20 if necessary," he replied with simple honesty. 30, however far it took. Why? The question hung between them, weighted with meanings neither of them was quite ready to examine. Wade was quiet for a long moment, his thumb moving absently across her knuckles in a gesture that sent unexpected warmth radiating up her arm. "Because leaving you there was not a choice I could live with," he said finally. "Because the moment I saw you lying there in the dirt, something in me just knew that I was meant to find you, meant to help you. I know that sounds foolish. We are strangers, but it is the truth." Olivia's heart was beating much too fast. This was gratitude, she told herself again. Proximity and vulnerability creating the illusion of connection. In a few weeks, when she was recovered and settled into her teaching position, these feelings would fade into simple friendship and appreciation. Except she did not believe that any more than Sarah apparently did. "It does not sound foolish," she heard herself say. "I felt something too out there on the trail. Even when I was barely conscious, I knew I could trust you. I have not felt that way about anyone in a very long time." His hand tightened on hers. "Miss Zimmerman, Olivia," she interrupted. "After everything we have been through together, I think we can use first names. Do you not agree, Olivia?" He said her name like it was something precious. "I would like very much to call on you properly once you are recovered, if that would be acceptable to you. I know this is fast. I know we barely know each other. But I would like the chance to change that." Every rational part of her brain screamed caution. She had known this man for barely a day. She was still grieving Thomas, still rebuilding her shattered life. Getting involved with someone new, especially someone who made her feel things she was not prepared to feel, seemed like inviting disaster. But there was something in Wade's eyes, an openness and sincerity that called to her damaged heart. And the memory of his arms around her, his voice steady and certain in the darkness, his absolute refusal to leave her behind, that meant something. That had to mean something. "I would like that," she said softly. "I would like that very much." The smile that broke across his face transformed him from striking to genuinely handsome. He stood slowly, still holding her hand, and bent to press a kiss to her knuckles with old-fashioned courtesy. "Then I will let you rest," he said, "and I will come back tomorrow if that is all right." "It is more than all right." He released her hand reluctantly and moved toward the door, then paused and looked back. "Olivia, I am truly glad you are here, glad you survived, glad I found you when I did." "So am I, Wade, so am I." After he left, Olivia lay back against her pillows and stared at the ceiling, her mind spinning. What was she doing? She had come to Stein's past to start over, to build a quiet, stable life teaching children and putting her past behind her. Falling for a cowboy had not been part of the plan, especially not falling this fast and this hard. But then again, she had learned the hard way that plans meant very little in the face of what life actually delivered. Maybe it was time to stop planning and start simply living, start taking chances on the unexpected gifts that appeared out of nowhere in the middle of the desert. Sarah returned a few minutes later, wearing a smile that suggested she had been eavesdropping shamelessly. "Well," she said. "That looked like it went well. Sarah, I do not know what I am doing. Nobody ever does when it comes to matters of the heart, dear. But if you want my opinion, Wade Barrett is about as good a man as you will find in this territory or any other. If he has decided you are worth pursuing, you could do far worse than giving him a chance. I just lost my fiancée 6 months ago, and that is tragic, and I am sorry for it. But you are here now, alive, with a future stretching out ahead of you. Thomas would not want you to spend the rest of your life in mourning, would he?" Olivia considered that. Thomas had been a good man, a kind man, but their relationship had been more about practicality than passion. Two lonely people finding comfort in each other, planning a sensible life together. She had cared for him deeply, had grieved his loss sincerely. But if she was honest with herself, she had never felt for Thomas what she had felt in just a single day with Wade, that sense of rightness, of recognition, of coming home to something she had not even known she was searching for. "No," she admitted, "he would want me to be happy." "Then let yourself consider the possibility," Sarah said gently. "Take your time, get to know Wade properly, but do not close yourself off from happiness just because you are afraid of being hurt again. That is no way to live." Over the next 3 days, Wade visited every afternoon without fail. He brought her books to read, wildflowers he picked on his ride into town, reports about the progress being made in preparing her schoolhouse and living quarters. They talked for hours, the conversation flowing easily between them, covering everything from their childhoods to their dreams for the future. Wade told her about growing up in Texas, about losing his parents to illness when he was 17, about the burning need to prove himself that had driven him west. He talked about his ranch with genuine passion, describing the satisfaction of building something with his own hands, of watching his cattle herd grow, of finally having a place that was truly his own. Olivia shared her own story, about growing up in Missouri, about becoming a teacher because she loved books and learning, and the idea of shaping young minds. She told him about Thomas with more honesty than she expected, admitting that while she had cared for him, theirs had been a relationship born of loneliness and circumstance rather than grand passion. "I thought that was enough," she said. "I thought practicality and companionship were what mattered in a marriage. Now I am not so sure." "What changed your mind?" Wade asked, though his eyes suggested he already knew the answer. "Someone carried me 10 miles through the desert," she replied, holding his gaze. "Someone risked his own life to save mine, someone who did not even know my name. That kind of selflessness, that kind of immediate connection, I did not know it was possible outside of novels." "It was not a risk," he said quietly. "Not really. Because failing to save, you would have been worse than anything that could have happened to me out there." The intensity in his voice made her breath catch. They were entering dangerous territory now, speaking truths that could not be unspoken, acknowledging feelings that were growing far faster than sensible or safe. "Wade, I am frightened," she admitted. "I am frightened of how much I feel for you already, how quickly this is happening." "It seems impossible." "Impossible things happen all the time out here," he countered. "I have built an entire life out of things people said were impossible. Why should this be any different? Because hearts are not cattle ranches. Because feelings can disappear as quickly as they appear. Because I have already lost so much, and I do not know if I can survive losing anything else." He reached out and took both her hands in his expression serious and intent. "Olivia, I cannot promise you that nothing bad will ever happen. This is a hard land and life does not come with guarantees. But I can promise you that I am not going anywhere. What I feel for you is not some passing fancy born of dramatic circumstances. This is real. You are real, and I want the chance to prove that to you properly." She looked down at their joined hands, at the contrast between his weathered strength and her softer skin still healing from sun damage. Everything was moving so fast, too fast by any reasonable standard. But reasonable had gotten her engaged to a man she respected, but did not truly love. Reasonable had left her alone and grieving with nothing but a teaching job in the middle of nowhere to call her own. Maybe it was time to be unreasonable. Maybe it was time to trust her heart instead of her head. "All right," she said, looking up to meet his eyes. "All right, Wade. Let us see where this goes." The smile that lit his face was worth every moment of fear and uncertainty. He raised her hands to his lips and kissed them both, then stood reluctantly. "The doc says you can move to your own place tomorrow," he said. "The schoolhouse has living quarters attached, and the town council has furnished them for you. I would like to help with the move if you will let me. I would appreciate that very much." True to his word, Wade arrived the next morning with a wagon to transport Olivia and the donated supplies the town had collected for her. Dr. Holloway declared her well enough for light activity as long as she promised to continue resting frequently and drinking plenty of fluids. Sarah hugged her tightly and made her promise to visit soon. The schoolhouse sat at the edge of town, a simple wooden structure with a peaked roof and a bell tower. The attached living quarters consisted of 2 rooms, a combined kitchen and sitting area, and a small bedroom. But everything was clean and fresh. The furniture was solid if simple, and the donations filled several crates and boxes stacked neatly against one wall. "The ladies' auxiliary went through their attics," Wade explained as he carried in the last box. "You have got dishes, linens, some clothes that should fit you well enough until you can have new ones made. Books, teaching supplies, even a few personal touches like that quilt on the bed. This town takes care of its own, and you are one of us now." Olivia felt tears prick her eyes yet again. After so much loss, so much hardship, this simple generosity felt overwhelming. "I do not know how I will ever repay everyone." "You will repay them by teaching their children well," Wade said simply. "That is all they ask. That and maybe participating in some of the community events. There is a barn dance next month and a church picnic before that. It would mean a lot to folks if you attended." "I will," she promised. "This is my home now. I want to be part of the community." Wade helped her unpack, hanging her borrowed clothes in the wardrobe, arranging dishes in the small cupboard, stacking books on a shelf. They worked in comfortable silence punctuated by occasional conversation, and Olivia found herself hyper-aware of his presence in her space, of how natural it felt to have him there. When everything was put away, he lingered by the door, clearly reluctant to leave but also respectful of propriety. They were alone in her home, unmarried, and the town was small enough that gossip could spread quickly. "I should go," he said, though he made no move to actually leave. "Let you settle in properly." "Thank you for everything," Olivia said. "For today, for the past few days, for my life." "I know I keep saying it, but I do not think I can say it enough." "You never have to thank me again," he replied. "But if you insist on expressing gratitude, maybe you would consider joining me for dinner one evening this week. There is a restaurant in town, nothing fancy but the food is decent. I would like to take you out properly if you feel up to it." "I would like that very much. How about Saturday?" "Saturday is perfect." He settled his hat on his head and moved toward the door, then paused. "Olivia, I am really glad you came to Stein's Pass. Even if the circumstances were terrible, I am glad you are here." "So am I," she said honestly. "More than I expected to be." After he left, Olivia explored her new home more thoroughly, running her hands over the furniture, examining the books on the shelf, testing the mattress on the bed. Everything felt surreal, like she had stepped into someone else's life. Just over a week ago, she had been in Kansas City, preparing to take a stage west with her entire future uncertain. Now she had a home, a job, and the beginnings of something that might become love if she was brave enough to let it. The next few days passed in a blur of preparation. Olivia met with the town council, a group of serious older men who expressed their relief at her survival and their hope that she would find Stein's past to her liking. They showed her the schoolhouse proper, a single room with rows of desks, a wood stove for winter, and a large slate board on one wall. Classes would begin in 2 weeks, giving her time to fully recover and prepare her lessons. She met some of the children she would be teaching, ranging in age from 6 to 14, most of them shy and curious in equal measure. She met other residents of the town, the storekeeper who promised her credit until her first salary payment arrived, the minister who invited her to Sunday services, the women of the auxiliary who plied her with advice and thinly veiled questions about Wade Barrett. Apparently, the entire town had noticed his constant presence at her side during her recovery, had observed the way he looked at her, had drawn their own conclusions. Olivia tried to deflect the questions as gracefully as possible, but she could feel the weight of expectation building around them. Saturday evening arrived, and Olivia found herself nervous in a way she had not been since her first teaching interview years ago. She dressed carefully in one of the borrowed dresses, a deep green cotton that fit reasonably well, and pinned her hair up in a simple style. The bruises and burns on her face had faded to barely noticeable marks, and her strength had returned enough that she no longer felt exhausted after minor exertion. Wade arrived precisely on time, dressed in clean trousers and a pressed shirt, his hair still damp from a recent washing. He looked at her for a long moment when she opened the door, something warm and appreciative in his expression. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "Thank you. You clean up rather well yourself." He offered his arm and she took it, allowing him to escort her down the main street toward the restaurant. People called out greetings as they passed, and Olivia felt the curious eyes following their progress. Let them look, she thought. Let them talk. For the first time in longer than she could remember, she felt genuinely happy, genuinely hopeful about what the future might hold. The restaurant was indeed simple but welcoming, with checkered tablecloths and oil lamps casting warm pools of light. Wade held her chair for her with old-fashioned courtesy, then settled across from her at a corner table that offered some measure of privacy. They ordered steak and potatoes, strong coffee, and pie for dessert. As they waited for their food, conversation flowed as easily as it had during his visits to the doctor's office. But there was a different quality to it now, an awareness of being on an official courtship, of testing the waters to see if this connection was real or simply circumstance. "Tell me something about yourself that you have not told me yet," Wade said. "Something important." Olivia considered the question. "I am terrified that I will not be a good enough teacher," she admitted, "that the children will not respect me or that I will fail to give them what they need. Teaching is the only thing I have ever been truly good at, and if I fail at this, I do not know what I will do." "You will not fail," Wade said with absolute certainty. "I have watched you these past few days, seen how you interact with people, how thoughtfully you approach everything. Those children are lucky to have you. You do not know that." "Yes, I do. I have gotten to know you, Olivia, and one thing I know for certain is that you do not do anything halfway. You will pour your heart into teaching those children, and they will thrive because of it." His faith in her was both touching and terrifying. "Your turn. Tell me something important about yourself." He was quiet for a moment, his expression growing serious. "I am afraid that I will not be enough," he said finally. "That my ranch and my life out here will seem too rough, too isolated compared to what you could have in a city somewhere. I am afraid that once you realize what a hard existence this is, you will leave." The vulnerability in his words struck her deeply. She reached across the table and took his hand, no longer caring who might see or what they might think. "Wade, I did not come out here looking for an easy life. I came here because I needed a fresh start, because I needed to prove to myself that I could survive on my own. The hardship does not frighten me, loneliness does, emptiness does, but a hard life shared with someone who matters, that does not scare me at all." His fingers tightened on hers. "You matter," he said roughly. "You matter more than I have words to explain." The food arrived then, breaking the intensity of the moment, but the connection between them remained. They ate and talked and laughed, and Olivia felt something inside her chest that had been clenched tight for months finally begin to relax and open. After dinner, Wade walked her home through the warm desert evening. The sky overhead was a riot of stars, more than Olivia had ever seen in her life. The Milky Way stretched across the heavens like a river of light. "It is beautiful out here," she said softly. "I never imagined anywhere could have this many stars." "One of my favorite things about this place," Wade agreed. "On the ranch, away from even the small amount of light the town produces, it is even more spectacular. I would like to show you sometime, if you would be willing to visit." "I would like that very much." They reached her door and stood in the small pool of lamplight, neither quite ready to say goodnight. Wade still held her hand, his thumb tracing absent patterns across her knuckles. "Olivia, I know this is moving fast," he said. "I know we should probably take things slower, be more careful. But I need you to know something. What I feel for you is not going to change. Whether we take this slow or fast, whether we are cautious or reckless, my feelings are not going anywhere. I am in this for as long as you will have me." Her heart was hammering against her ribs. Every rational thought in her head screamed that it was too soon, too much, too fast. But her heart, her battered and bruised heart that had thought it would never trust anyone again, knew better. "I feel the same way," she whispered. "It terrifies me how much I feel for you already, but it is real. I know it is real." Wade raised his free hand to cup her cheek, his touch infinitely gentle. "May I kiss you?" she nodded, not trusting her voice. He leaned in slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away if she wanted. But she did not want to. She wanted this, wanted him, wanted to seal this fragile new thing between them with physical contact. His lips touched hers softly at first, tentative and questioning. She responded by leaning into him, her free hand coming up to rest against his chest where she could feel his heart beating as rapidly as her own. The kiss deepened, became something more urgent and real, and Olivia felt like she was falling and being caught all at once. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Wade rested his forehead against hers. "I am going to marry you," he said, the words somewhere between a question and a statement. "I know that is a ridiculous thing to say after one official date, but I am going to marry you, Olivia Zimmerman. I knew it when I was carrying you through the desert, and I know it even more certainly now." She should have been terrified. She should have pulled away and told him he was being absurd. Instead, she found herself smiling. "I think you might be right," she said. "I think you just might be right about that." He kissed her again, and this time there was nothing tentative about it. This was a promise and a claiming and a celebration all at once. When he finally pulled away, his eyes were dark with emotion. "I should go before I do something that would scandalize the town council," he said roughly. "But I will see you tomorrow. Church in the morning and then maybe a picnic in the afternoon. That sounds perfect." She watched him walk away into the darkness, his form gradually swallowed by the night. Then she went inside and closed the door, leaning back against it with a hand pressed to her still racing heart. What was she doing? What were they doing? Everything was happening so fast, too fast by any reasonable measure. But there was nothing reasonable about finding love in the middle of a desert, nothing sensible about two strangers recognizing something essential in each other after just a few days. Sometimes, Olivia thought, you just had to trust that the universe knew what it was doing. That the terrible things, the bandits, the heat, the desperate struggle for survival had all been leading her here to this moment, to this man who had literally carried her to safety and then straight into his heart. The following weeks fell into a pattern that felt both new and surprisingly natural. Olivia prepared her schoolhouse and met with parents, organized her curriculum and acquired supplies. Wade continued running his ranch, but found time to visit town almost daily, always with some excuse: supplies to buy, business to conduct, but everyone knew he was really there to see Olivia. They attended church together on Sundays, the minister beaming at them benevolently from the pulpit. They went on picnics when Wade could spare the time, riding out to beautiful vistas where they could talk and laugh away from prying eyes. He showed her his ranch, a sprawling property with a modest but sturdy house, good grazing land, and a growing herd of cattle that he talked about with obvious pride. Olivia met his ranch hands, a collection of weathered men who treated Wade with respect bordering on devotion, and treated Olivia with elaborate courtesy. She could see that Wade was a good employer, fair and generous, the kind of man who worked alongside his employees rather than simply ordering them around. School started in mid-September, and Olivia threw herself into teaching with all the passion and dedication Wade had predicted. Her students ranged from eager 6-year-olds just learning their letters to teenagers who would rather be working than sitting in a classroom. But she found ways to reach all of them, tailoring her lessons to their needs and interests, making learning feel relevant to their lives. Wade would sometimes arrive just as school was letting out, leaning against the fence watching her interact with the children, his expression soft with something that looked very much like love. When the students had all dispersed, he would walk her home, carrying her books and lesson plans, asking about her day, sharing stories about ranch life. 2 months after Olivia arrived in Steins Pass, Wade asked her to marry him properly. He took her out to a beautiful overlook on his property, the sun setting in shades of orange and gold and crimson, and got down on one knee in the dust. "I know I already told you I was going to marry you," he said, pulling a simple gold band from his pocket. "But I figured I should ask properly. Olivia Zimmerman, you are the bravest, smartest, most beautiful woman I have ever known. You challenged me from the moment I found you half dead in the desert, and you have been challenging me every day since. I love you more than I thought it was possible to love anyone. Will you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife?" Tears streamed down Olivia's face as she nodded emphatically. "Yes, yes, absolutely yes." He slid the ring onto her finger and then stood, pulling her into his arms and kissing her with all the pent-up passion and promise of their future together. When they finally broke apart, both laughing and crying at once, the last rays of sunlight painted them in gold. "When?" he asked. "I will wait as long as you need, but I am hoping you are going to say soon, because I do not think I can stand much more of kissing you good night at your door and then riding home alone." She laughed at his honesty. "How about November? That gives us 2 months to plan, and we will be married before the worst of winter arrives." "November," he agreed. "The town is going to throw us the biggest wedding this territory has ever seen." He was not wrong. The moment the engagement was announced, the women of Stein's Pass went into planning mode with military precision. Olivia found herself caught up in dress fittings and menu planning and debates about flowers and decorations. Wade endured good-natured ribbing from his ranch hands and serious advice from older married men about the responsibilities of being a husband. The wedding took place on a crisp November Saturday, the air cool but the sky brilliantly clear. Nearly the entire town turned out for the ceremony held in the little church, with the minister presiding over the joining of Wade and Olivia's lives with obvious satisfaction. Olivia wore a dress of cream-colored silk, donated by a widow whose own wedding dress had been carefully preserved. Wade wore a new suit, his hair neatly trimmed, his eyes never leaving Olivia's face as she walked down the aisle toward him. The vows they exchanged were traditional, but felt weighted with extra meaning after everything they had been through. When Wade promised to honor and protect her, Olivia remembered those 10 miles he had carried her. When she promised to stand by him through hardship and prosperity, she meant every word with her whole heart. The kiss that sealed their marriage was chaste in deference to the assembled crowd, but the promise in it was clear. When they turned to face the congregation as husband and wife, the applause was thunderous. The reception was held in the town hall, tables laden with food that everyone had contributed, a small band playing lively music, and dancing that continued well into the evening. Wade swept Olivia around the floor with more enthusiasm than skill, both of them laughing as they nearly collided with other couples. "Happy?" he asked, his arms secure around her waist. "Happier than I thought possible," she admitted. 6 months ago I thought my life was over. Now I feel like it is just beginning. Our life," he corrected, "beginning together." As the evening wore on and the celebration showed no signs of slowing, Wade leaned down to whisper in Olivia's ear. "What do you say we make our escape? I am eager to begin the private portion of our celebration." Heat flooded her cheeks, but she nodded, allowing him to lead her toward the door. Their departure was noticed and accompanied by cheers and good-natured teasing, but they made it outside into the cool night air and practically ran to where Wade's wagon waited. He had prepared the ranch house for her arrival, adding feminine touches and comforts that spoke of his desire to make her feel at home. When he carried her over the threshold, Olivia could not help but remember the last time he had carried her, both of them desperate and fighting for survival. How far they had come since that terrible day. "What are you thinking?" Wade asked as he set her gently on her feet in their bedroom. "I am thinking about the trail," she admitted. "About how you saved my life that day, about how I would have died if you had not found me." His expression grew serious. He reached up to cup her face in both hands, his touch infinitely tender. "I am thinking about that too, about how close I came to riding past without investigating those buzzards, about how different my life would be right now if I had. It terrifies me to think about." "But you did not ride past. You found me. You saved me. You saved me right back," he said quietly. "I did not realize how empty my life was until you filled it. I thought I was content building my ranch, focused only on success and security, but you showed me what was missing. You showed me what really matters." She kissed him then, pouring everything she felt into it, gratitude and love and desire and promise. He responded in kind, his hands moving from her face to her shoulders to her waist, pulling her close against him. Their wedding night was tender and passionate by turns, a learning of each other's bodies and responses, a claiming and a giving that left them both breathless and satisfied. Afterward, lying tangled together in the darkness, Olivia felt a peace settle over her that she had not experienced in years. "I love you," she whispered into the darkness. "I love you so much it frightens me sometimes." "I love you too," Wade replied, his arms tightening around her. "And you never have to be frightened again. I have got you. For the rest of our lives, I have got you." The first year of their marriage was not without challenges. The ranch demanded constant work and attention, especially as winter set in and made everything more difficult. Olivia continued teaching, balancing her responsibilities to her students with her responsibilities as a ranch wife. Sometimes the demands felt overwhelming, but they faced everything together, supporting each other through difficulties and celebrating victories. In the spring, Olivia discovered she was pregnant. The news filled them both with joy and terror in equal measure. Wade became impossibly protective, trying to stop her from doing anything remotely strenuous. Olivia had to firmly remind him that she was pregnant, not made of glass, and that pioneer women had been having babies while running ranches and households for generations. "I know," he said, his hand resting protectively on her still flat stomach. "I know you are strong, but you are everything to me, Olivia. You and this baby. The thought of anything happening to either of you makes me crazy." "Nothing is going to happen," she assured him, though she harbored her own fears. Childbirth was dangerous, especially out here far from sophisticated medical care. But women did this every day and survived. She would too. As her pregnancy progressed, the town rallied around them with the same generosity they had shown when she first arrived. The women threw her a party, showering her with tiny clothes and advice. Wade's ranch hands built a beautiful cradle from polished wood. Dr. Holloway promised to attend the birth personally, and assured them both that Olivia was healthy and strong. She taught through her 6th month, before finally agreeing to take a leave of absence for the baby's arrival. A young man from a neighboring town was hired as a temporary replacement, though the students made it clear they were counting the days until their beloved Miss Olivia, now Mrs. Barrett, would return. In early November, almost exactly a year after their wedding, Olivia went into labor. It was long and difficult and terrifying, but Wade never left her side, holding her hand through each contraction, wiping her forehead with cool cloths, whispering encouragement and love. When their son finally arrived in the early hours of the morning, his lusty cries filling the bedroom, Wade openly wept with relief and joy. Dr. Holloway placed the baby in Olivia's arms, pronouncing him healthy and strong. "What should we call him?" Wade asked, his finger gently touching their son's tiny hand. The baby gripped it with surprising strength, and Wade's expression melted into something infinitely tender. "What about William?" Olivia suggested. "After your father." "William Barrett," Wade said, testing the name. "I like it." "Billy for short." Little Billy proved to be a demanding but delightful addition to their family. He had Wade's dark hair and Olivia's green eyes, and from the beginning showed signs of having a personality as strong as both his parents combined. Wade was a devoted father, often found in the middle of the night walking the floor with his son when Olivia was too exhausted to move, watching him with their child. Olivia fell in love with her husband all over again. He was so gentle, so patient, so clearly amazed by this tiny person they had created together. And when he looked at her over Billy's head, his eyes held such love and gratitude that it took her breath away. "Thank you," he said one night after getting Billy settled. "Thank you for him, for our family, for this life. I never imagined I could be this happy." "Neither did I," Olivia admitted. "Sometimes I still cannot believe this is real, that I have you and Billy and this home, that I survived that day in the desert to find all of this." "Everything happens for a reason," Wade said, pulling her close. "Even the terrible things, maybe especially the terrible things, because they led us here." Olivia returned to teaching when Billy was 6 months old, bringing him to school with her where he napped in a basket while she taught. The students adored having a baby in the classroom, and the older girls competed for the privilege of holding him during recess. It was unconventional, but it worked for their family, and that was all that mattered. The years passed in a blur of work and love and growth. The ranch prospered under Wade's careful management, growing until it was one of the most successful operations in the territory. Billy grew from a baby into a curious toddler into a bright little boy who loved learning and horses in equal measure. When Billy was 3, Olivia became pregnant again. This time the pregnancy was easier, her body knowing what to expect. She taught until her 8th month, then handed over her classroom to the permanent replacement teacher who had been hired when Olivia decided to step back to focus more on her family. Their second child, a daughter they named Alina after Olivia's mother, arrived in the spring of 1882. She was smaller than Billy had been, more delicate, but with the same strong spirit. Wade was just as besotted with his daughter as he had been with his son, and Billy took his role as big brother with utmost seriousness. With 2 children and a growing ranch, life became even more demanding. But it was a good kind of demanding, filled with purpose and meaning and love. Olivia had never imagined she could be this content, this fulfilled. The girl who had collapsed in the desert felt like a different person from a different lifetime. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Wade surprised her by taking her back to the place where he had found her. They rode out in the early morning, leaving the children with Sarah for the day, and found the spot after some searching. "Why here?" Olivia asked as they stood in the place where her life had nearly ended and ultimately began. "Because I wanted to remember," Wade said simply. "I wanted us both to remember how we started, what we survived. Sometimes when life gets busy and challenging, it is easy to take things for granted. I never want to take you for granted, Olivia. I never want to forget how lucky I am that I found you that day." Tears pricked her eyes. "I am the lucky one. You saved my life in every way possible." "We saved each other," he corrected, pulling her into his arms. "And we are going to keep saving each other every single day for the rest of our lives." They made love there in the desert under the wide blue sky, reclaiming that place of death and transforming it into a celebration of life and love. Afterward, lying in Wade's arms with the sun warm on her skin, Olivia felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over her. "I want more," she said suddenly. "More children, more years, more everything with you. I want to build a life so full and rich that when we are old and gray, we can look back and know we did not waste a single moment." "Then that is exactly what we will do," Wade promised. "As many children as you want, as many years as we are given. I will never stop being grateful for every single day I get with you." Over the next decade, they had 3 more children, 2 boys and another girl. The ranch house expanded to accommodate their growing family, rooms added as needed, laughter and chaos and love filling every corner. Wade taught his sons the ranching business while also encouraging their individual interests. Olivia made sure all her children, daughters included, received excellent educations and the encouragement to pursue their dreams. The town of Steins Pass grew and changed around them. The railroad finally came through, bringing new opportunities and new challenges. Some of the original settlers moved on, lured by promises of gold or greener pastures elsewhere. But the Barrett family remained, their ranch a fixture of the community, their commitment to their neighbors unwavering. Wade became a respected leader in the territory, serving on various councils and committees, using his success to help others build their own dreams. Olivia eventually returned to teaching part-time, unable to completely leave behind her love of education. They raised their children to value hard work and integrity, to treat everyone with respect regardless of station, to understand that privilege came with responsibility. As their children grew and started families of their own, the ranch became a gathering place for an ever-expanding clan. Grandchildren arrived in rapid succession, filling the house with noise and energy that reminded Wade and Olivia of their own child-rearing years. They watched with pride as their sons took over more of the ranch operations, as their daughters pursued their own paths with confidence and determination. In the spring of 1903, Wade and Olivia celebrated their 25th wedding anniversary surrounded by children and grandchildren, and what felt like half the territory. They renewed their vows in the same little church where they had first married, both of them gray-haired now, but with eyes that still held the same love and recognition they had found in each other all those years ago. 25 years, Wade said during his toast at the reception. 25 years since I found the greatest treasure of my life lying in the desert, half dead but still fighting. I have told this story so many times that my children are probably sick of hearing it, but I am going to tell it once more because it matters. Because how we started defines who we became. He turned to look directly at Olivia, his voice growing thick with emotion. You were supposed to die out there. By every reasonable measure, you should have died, but you did not, because you are the strongest person I have ever known. And I got to carry you to safety, got to be the one who helped you survive. That walk, those 10 miles with you in my arms, was the most important journey of my life. Because every step brought me closer to the future we would build together. Olivia stood and moved to his side, taking his hand in hers. And you were supposed to ride past, she said, her own voice trembling. You had no obligation to investigate those buzzards, no reason to put yourself at risk for a stranger. But you did, because that is who you are. You are the man who does not leave people behind, who does not give up when things get difficult, who carries others through their darkest moments. You saved my life that day, and you have been saving it every day since. They kissed to thunderous applause, and as Wade wrapped his arms around his wife of 25 years, he sent up a silent prayer of gratitude to whatever force had guided him to that spot in the desert on that fateful day. More years passed, measured now in grandchildren's birthdays and seasonal gatherings rather than daily struggles. Wade's hair turned completely white, his face weathered by decades of sun and wind into something resembling carved leather. Olivia moved more slowly, arthritis making her mornings difficult, but her mind remained sharp and her love for her family undiminished. They took to spending quiet evenings on the porch of the ranch house, watching the sun set over land they had worked and loved for nearly 40 years. Sometimes they talked, reminiscing about old times or discussing the latest family news. Sometimes they simply sat in companionable silence, their hands clasped together, saying everything that needed to be said without words. You ever regret it? Wade asked one evening in the summer of 1910. Staying here instead of moving somewhere easier, somewhere more civilized. Olivia looked at him in genuine surprise. Regret? Wade, this is the best life I could have imagined, better than anything I dared dream of when I was younger. Why would I regret any of it? Because it was hard, he said. Harder than it needed to be. If we had settled somewhere else, somewhere with more resources and opportunities, you might have had an easier time. Easier is not better, Olivia said firmly. This life taught me what I was capable of. It showed me strengths I did not know I possessed. And it gave me you, gave me our children, gave me a place to belong. I would not trade a single difficult moment of it. Wade raised her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. I love you. Have I told you that today? Only 3 times, but I never get tired of hearing it. I love you, he repeated. I will love you until my last breath and whatever comes after. And I love you, always and forever. In the fall of 1912, Wade fell ill. It started as a simple cold but developed into pneumonia, his aging body unable to fight it off as effectively as it once would have. Olivia nursed him with the same determination she had applied to everything in her life, but even her strength and will could not hold back time forever. Their children gathered as Wade grew weaker, along with grandchildren and even a few great-grandchildren. The house was full of quiet tears and whispered prayers, but also love and gratitude for a life well lived. On a cool October morning, with Olivia holding his hand and their family surrounding the bed, Wade opened his eyes one last time. "Olivia," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "I am here," she assured him, leaning close. "I am right here." 10 miles, he said, a ghost of his old smile touching his lips. "Best walk of my life." "Mine too," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Mine too, my love." He squeezed her hand weakly, looked around at the faces of his children and grandchildren, then closed his eyes and was gone. The funeral was the largest Steins Pass had ever seen. People came from all over the territory to pay their respects to a man who had built not just a successful ranch, but an entire legacy of integrity and kindness. The minister spoke of Wade's contributions to the community, his generosity, his devotion to his family. But it was Olivia's brief remarks that left hardly a dry eye in the church. "My husband saved my life in the desert 44 years ago," she said, her voice clear despite her grief. "But that was just the beginning. He saved my life every single day after that by choosing to love me, by choosing to build something beautiful with me, by choosing to face every challenge as a partner rather than alone. He gave me children and grandchildren and a home filled with more love than I ever thought possible. And now, though my heart is broken, I am so grateful. Grateful for every moment, every laugh, every struggle we shared. He was the best man I have ever known, and I will love him until I join him again." Olivia lived for 5 more years after Wade's death, surrounded by her children and their families. She remained sharp and engaged, continuing to tell stories about the old days, about how she and Wade had met, about building the ranch from almost nothing. The tale of how he carried her 10 miles through the desert became family legend, told and retold to each new generation. On a spring morning in 1917, Olivia passed away peacefully in her sleep. She was buried next to Wade in the little cemetery outside Steins Pass, their graves marked with a simple stone that read, "Wade Barrett and Olivia Zimmerman Barrett. He carried her to safety. She carried his heart." Together they built a life worth living. Years later, their great-great-grandchildren would visit that grave and ask about the inscription. And someone would tell the story again, about a cowboy who found a dying woman in the desert, about 10 miles that changed 2 lives forever, about a love that began in desperation and grew into something that defined an entire family's history. The ranch remained in the Barrett family for generations, expanding and modernizing, but never losing the essential character that Wade and Olivia had given it. The values they instilled, hard work, integrity, compassion, commitment, became the family's foundation, passed down through the decades like a precious inheritance. And sometimes, on quiet desert evenings when the sun set in shades of gold and crimson, family members claimed they could feel their presence still, the echo of a great love that had started with a desperate journey and grown into something eternal. A reminder that sometimes the worst moments of our lives lead us exactly where we are meant to be, to the people we are meant to love, to the future we are meant to build. Wade and Olivia's story became more than just family history. It became a testament to the power of compassion, The importance of not looking away when someone needs help. The extraordinary things that can grow from a simple act of kindness. Their 10-mile journey through the desert became a metaphor for marriage itself, difficult, demanding, requiring strength and determination, but ultimately leading to safety and home. The schoolhouse where Olivia taught still stood decades later, eventually converted into a historical museum dedicated to preserving the story of Stein's Pass and its pioneers. Among the exhibits was a section devoted to Wade and Olivia Barrett, featuring photographs, letters, and artifacts from their life together. The centerpiece was Wade's own written account of finding Olivia and carrying her to safety, composed late in his life at his children's request. In it, he wrote, "I have accomplished much in my life that I am proud of. I built a successful ranch, raised good children, contributed to my community. But none of it compares to what I did on that August day in 1878. Finding Olivia, refusing to leave her behind, carrying her those 10 miles to safety, that was the most important thing I ever did. Not because it made me a hero, but because it brought me to her. Because it started the greatest adventure of my life. If I could go back and change anything, I would not. Not the heat, not the exhaustion, not the fear that I might not make it, because every step of that journey brought me closer to everything that mattered. Every step brought me home." And so their story lived on, told and retold, inspiring generations to believe in the power of love, the importance of not giving up, the extraordinary possibilities that exist when two people find each other against all odds. The desert that had nearly killed Olivia became sacred ground for the Barrett family, a place where death had been defeated and life had triumphed. In the end, Wade and Olivia's legacy was not the ranch they built or the wealth they accumulated. It was the family they created, the love they shared, the example they set of what it meant to commit to another person completely and without reservation. It was the story of 10 miles that became a lifetime, of a chance encounter that became destiny, of a rescue that became the foundation for generations of love and life. Their great-great-great-grandchildren would eventually scatter across the country, pursuing opportunities that Wade and Olivia could never have imagined. But they all carried the story with them, the knowledge of where they came from and what their family stood for. And when life got hard, when they faced their own deserts and desperate journeys, they would remember the cowboy who did not ride past, the woman who refused to give up, the 10 miles that changed everything. That was the true measure of Wade and Olivia's love, not just what it meant to them, but what it meant to everyone who came after. They had taken the worst day of Olivia's life and transformed it into something beautiful and lasting. They had proven that love could grow from trauma, that strength could emerge from vulnerability, that the end of one story could be the beginning of something even better. And on quiet evenings in Stein's Pass, when the desert wind whispered through the scrubland and the stars blazed overhead in their ancient patterns, you could almost hear the echo of footsteps, steady and determined. The sound of a man carrying his future through the wilderness, step by agonizing step, refusing to give up, refusing to let go, carrying not just a woman but all the love and life and family that would flow from that single act of courage and compassion. 10 miles that became forever. A rescue that became a romance. An ending that was really just the beginning of the most beautiful story two people could write together. That was the legacy of Wade Barrett and Olivia Zimmerman, the cowboy and the schoolteacher, whose love affair started in the desert and echoed through generations, proving that sometimes the greatest journeys begin with a single step in the right direction, at exactly the right moment, to save exactly the right person.